Hello anybody, and welcome to Let's Play Super Metroid. I'm Mr. Debius, or just Deeb, and today we are starting LP number 10. Super Metroid, a little title on the Super Nintendo that a lot of people love, and I love it too, and maybe you do too, and that's a preview of the game that we don't really want to see. So yeah, this is going to be a fun game. This is going to be a while game. I'm going to data clear the second file here. Not that the files are really all that different, but that's what I'm going to clear. So, without further ado, aside from going back to exit, because we want to... Is it going to go back to the... Okay. Alright, now that we've done that, we can go into this, and we are going to start Samus B. I've already tried recording once, but I'm not going to get into that. So, yeah. Options, you don't really get a lot of options to choose from. I think special setting mode has to do with difficulty. Japanese text is also an option, but there's not a ton of text in this game, though there's more text than cutscenes. So, without further ado, let us begin Super Metroid.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
That's high quality soundbite for Super Nintendo. That's pretty good. I first battled the Metroids on planet Zebes. It was there that I foiled the plans of the space pirate leader Mother Brain to use the creatures to attack galactic civilization. That's actually the end of Metroid 1 right there, final boss battle. I next fought the Metroids on their homeworld, SR-388. I completely eradicated them, except for a larva, which after hatching followed me like a confused child. And this is the end of Metroid 2 on the Game Boy. I personally delivered it to the Galactic Research Station at Ceres, so scientists could study its energy producing qualities. The scientists' findings were astounding. They discovered that the powers of the Metroid might be harnessed for the good of civilization. Satisfied that all was well, I left the station to seek a new bounty to hunt. But I had hardly gone beyond the asteroid belt when I picked up a distress signal. Ceres Station was under attack! So we're going back immediately where we came from, Ceres Station. This is where the cutscene left off, and really where the story left off, on Space Colony. That's it, not Space Colony Ceres, just Space Colony. So that's actually a really cool cutscene, and also pretty much the only cutscene in the entire game. Super Metroid is very scarce on its cutscenes, and that's fine, I'll get into that a little bit later. So yeah, Super Metroid, third in the series, is actually, it's kind of cool, because at this point, it had more continuity than any other Nintendo series at the time that I can think of. Most games didn't really have this kind of continuity between them. Direct continuity, anyway. You can clearly draw the line between the games, and this one, it just picks up where the second one left off, and it's really cool. And you come into this room, this is actually the start screen for the game, and you can see the dead scientists. Oh no. So we already have a few controls. This is the glass case where we saw the Metroid, by the way. And you can run, you can jump, you can shoot, you can aim down, you can aim up, and these are the basic controls that you need to know as you start this game. Most people don't discover running immediately, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Not that you think you need to run, because you actually run at a pretty brisk pace. So we investigate this space station a little bit further, looking for this baby Metroid, and here it is. Hey, little guy. What are you doing just hanging out here? And it squeaks at us, and it's adorable. And oh, it's Ridley! It is Ridley, and welcome to the first boss fight in the game. This is Ridley, Samus's arch enemy in the Metroid. In the Metroid series, you might know him. You probably know him if you know Metroid. He's the only consistent character other than... He's like the most consistent character other than Samus. He appears in so many of the Metroid games, usually in ridiculous ways. But yeah, he is the primary antagonist of the whole series, despite rarely being a final boss, as in like never being a final boss as far as I even know. So immediately he's going to he's a brutal initial boss fight, and you can try your best to shoot him, and do try your best, because it is kind of a tense fight. And ow, he hits you really hard with that tail, but once he knocks you below a certain point, he's going to just fly out of here with the baby Metroid, so you lose the fight essentially, and he escapes. But now, and he activates a self-destruct sequence because he is a prick. Because Ridley and Samus, they do not have a good history together. They are like... Ridley is to Samus what Bowser is to Mario, except more severe, because Bowser and Mario go go-karting, but Samus would never go go-karting with Ridley. She would just shoot him right off the road, and, you know, that's just how it goes. And they've got a very fascinating history, but this is the first game that really established a rivalry between the two, and I'll get into that more later. But we're we're on our way escaping from the space station as it explodes, and we got this really cool graphical effect that you don't necessarily think a ton of on the Super Nintendo when you play it for the first time, but when you think about it, this is actually a really cool effect. But all you need to do is get up on this elevator, and that'll bring us out of here and end that sequence. So, that station, with all those people, are dead. Planet Zebes. This is where the first game took place, and this is actually where the Space Pirates had their first base of operations, which Samus destroyed. So I think the assumption is that Ridley flew here, because it's probably the closest place nearby. I think that's what the plot is trying to go for, because otherwise, why else would she fly here? Aside from just to, like, hang out, but... This opening very much establishes the mood and setting that's going to be predominating this game. The rainstorm and the lightning cracks and the very, very subtle dark atmospheric music is already setting enough. One thing quickly, you can actually go inside your ship to save your game and restock on health and ammunition, because there is going to be ammunition in this game for a couple things, but not that you know about that yet. Anyway, so we come down on the surface of this planet. You never actually go on the surface in Metroid 1, so that's a cool little detail. So everything starts off as lonely, and this opening is just, the bugs scatter, you're still alone, and everything is just so well put together. You got the bugs fleeing. This is how you do an opening to a sci-fi game, where the mood is supposed to be lonely and dark, and you already see alternate paths that you can't go down yet, so the game is already establishing kind of what it's going to be going for. You have these alternate paths that you can't really go down yet, and this is going to kind of this comes to define the Metroid series as a whole, as well as the whole Metroidvania movement, in which, you know, you can't explore everything right away, but you can see that the paths are there. So yeah, another path we can't go down? Of course, the original Metroid did this too, but it was a lot more open-ended and a lot more difficult, and that's kind of the reason that I'm not playing Metroid 1, or Metroid 2 for that matter. They have not aged well. Metroid 3, though, is just beautiful and gorgeous. Look at that fog scrolling effect, and look at Samus's idle animation. It's just, the touches are so subtle, they're not exaggerated, they're just... She's a living, breathing sprite, and it is great quality. Now, this elevator shaft that we're going down is actually from the ending of Metroid 1, when Samus destroys the entire Turian. Turian is the place where the Space Pirates set up their base of operations, and this was the final sequence of the game that Samus had to escape out of. Now, there is no fall damage in this game, so you can just kind of fall to the bottom if you want, but I kind of want to go at a somewhat slow pace to kind of absorb stuff as it happens. Of course, this is... If you remember the opening cinematic, this is where the final boss of Metroid 1 was. That's where Mother Brain was, and this was like the whole hall leading up to her. And just the attention to detail and like seeing this in updated Super Nintendo 16-bit graphics must have been very exciting for the time. It's kind of like when you see like your favorite places from any game get upgraded for the next generation. It's so satisfying to see. And this is actually where the first Metroid game starts. Right here. Now, if you try to go to the right, and the reason I'm going to the right is kind of actually to point something out about Metroid 1. In the first Metroid game, if you went to the right, you would be impeded in your progress. You wouldn't be able to continue on. So the game actually forced you to go left. Now, this might seem like a minor thing, but that was the game's way of teaching you that you could go left, and it was cool because, well, a lot of games at the time only proceeded to the right, but it was a way to teach you that the game is more open-ended. And now we have the Morphing Ball, which by modern Metroid standards is just called the Morph Ball, but there is now an eye looking at us, and I do not trust it because it seems that picking that up has triggered some kind of security system that is going to just be a nightmare for us. So we want to explore a little bit more of this area as we can, but we won't be able to proceed very far because, well, the game isn't just about going through the entire first game in updated graphics, because that would be silly. Because that would just basically be a remake. And funny enough, they did do a remake, Metroid Zero Mission, which totally outclasses the original game, but again, conversation for another time. As you can see, this is a Chozo statue. Chozo were the bird people, an ancient yet technologically advanced race that actually raised Samus because, well, her parents died. And the reason I'm bringing this up here is because this never comes up in the game. This is like lore stuff that you wouldn't know. Oh, sorry, that's the Wii U menu screen where you can actually use save states, but I'm not going to use save states because I'm going to play the game the way it was made on the Super Nintendo. But yeah, you would never really know, aside from like material outside of the games, that Samus's history goes to about she lived on a space colony until Ridley and space pirates attacked, and Ridley was the one who killed her parents right in front of her. So that is where their whole rivalry began and where their history began. I wouldn't even call it a rivalry at that point, but I don't remember what stopped Ridley from killing her at that point. But anyway, we have our first pack of missiles. Missiles are the first real upgrade to your arsenal that you get. You switch to it with the select button, but you have a limited supply, and they'll be useful for a while, but mostly, for the most part, they're actually used to break down red doors in the early game, I notice, just as, you know. But they always take 5 missiles, which is the equivalent of a missile pack, which I never really liked. I mean, if you have missiles, it might as well just be like 1 or 2 to break it down. Because there's nothing more frustrating than only having like 4 missiles left and then not being able to break down a door, and now this place has been reinvaded by pirates. They've already cleared out the dusty smell, and they've already invaded, and they've, well, not invaded, they're just kind of coming back to their home operation. So yeah, these are the space pirates, and why are they here again? That's really a curious question, and why they're just kind of scavenging about their old base of operations. It's just kind of cool. Maybe it's in reaction to that security thing we tripped when we got the Morphing Ball, and now they're just kind of like trying to put down Samus, and maybe they have their own base of operations already set up. But I like to think of it as them just scavenging their old base of operations for like old things that they might have left behind before this place exploded. By the way, what is it with games and self-destruct sequences that don't actually destroy the base? Like, yeah, everything's kind of cracked and broken, but everything's still kind of in one piece, and, well, that's very well done. And of course, you may have noticed, the planet has come to life. There are creatures milling about, there are monsters around, we have missiles, which, no, I don't mean to keep opening that. Sorry, it'll take a little bit for me to get used to the controls, even though I had a little bit of practice because, well, my first recording on this failed, but I won't get into that. So we got these bugs flying around, and missiles, of course, are a very effective way of blowing them up, and of course they're handy. The little purple orbs, of course, are life. I don't think I mentioned that. You can aim in pretty much all directions and shoot down, and shooting down is actually somewhat useful in this game. So we go through this door. And this is actually an optional area. You don't need to come this way, and that's a lot of Metroid 2. Not just, like, not Metroid number 2, Metroid TOO. And that there's a lot of optional paths in Metroid and a lot of optional pickups. This is kind of gonna come to define most of the game. So, a bit of a confession time. I don't know where everything in this game is. I've played this game a few times, I've beaten it a few times, and I adore it, but I've never actually 100% completed it. Because, well, a lot of the stuff is hidden very well, but I am going to try and pick up what I can. I won't deliberately ignore power-ups, and if I see them, I'll try to get them. But I'm going to do my best. This is actually a very popular game for speedrunners and sequence breakers because of all the different paths and things you can take. But I'm going to try and, like, I'm probably 20% because I'm not very good at it, 80% because I like doing things in the intended order because I'm boring and dull. But yeah, this is going to be a fairly straightforward playthrough from start to finish. I don't know if I'm going to get everything in the game. I'm going to try to get stuff as I see it. I have not decided if I'm going to try to go for everything, although there would probably be an episode where we just go on to get it. So we go through this door, and now we can go down here, but not very far. I don't know what's with the spooky glowy faces on the wall. That's just kind of creepy. And why are those even there? They're scary, and I don't like them. But yeah, that is kind of our introductory look at Super Metroid. We got this little guy up here that we can't actually destroy, so some enemies can't be destroyed. So that, I think, is a good introductory look. We got missiles, we revived we've come seeking the baby Metroid on the planet. We found out that the pirates have set up a new operation here. But I think that's going to be a good episode for today. I know it wasn't super long, and we had the opening cutscene and stuff, but I'm going to keep these episodes, going to try to keep them to a reasonable length, and I'm going to be cutting them at save stations. So I think that's going to be an adequate stopping point for today. So if you want to see us continue on exploring Zebes, looking for the space pirates and looking for the baby Metroid, then I just hope to see somebody in the next one. Bye-bye!